Hello, in this video I'm going to do a hopefully quick video showing you how to do the power-ups and make the breakout game get more difficult as you play. I'm not going to do a full-on step-by-step tutorial, I'm just going to show you how I would solve it and explain the code that I used because there wasn't many people that were sort of interested in it, but I didn't want to leave people that wanted to know how to do that in the lurch, so I just wanted to do a quick video to help you do that. So here's a new solution to the breakout games. It's mostly the same as the original, but I'll show you the differences. One of the things I've added is a title screen. This is just a rubbish one, but just as a sort of placeholder. I'm using a title screen to be able to reset the game. So if we look at the scenes in the original tutorial, so this tutorial you'll need to have gone through the original tutorial or have some experience with Gdevelop to sort of understand what I'm talking about. So this isn't a standalone tutorial. So I've got a scene called title and a scene called breakout. And then if we look at the code for this title, events, all it's doing is if I click on the left mouse button, it jumps to the game proper. So I'm using this to reset the game. So if I go to the breakout, so the other thing I've changed is how I'm doing the variables. Part of that is part of the change is the fact that Gdevelop changed how it handles variables a little bit, but also that mechanic. So in the original tutorial, I made all of the variables global variables. In this solution, I make them all scene variables. So what I mean by that, so I add an action, I'm going to add a variable, change variable value. And the old one, if I create a new variable here, so I name a variable that doesn't exist, it would just let you do it, and you could set it to a value. But in this one, it has a whinge saying it doesn't exist. So you click on this to add it, and you get to the variable editor. You can make scene variables and global variables. Scene variables only exist in that scene, which is what I want in this case, so that I can jump back to the title screen when I lose all my lives, and then reset the score and whatever other variables I've used that I don't necessarily remember. So that's handy. Global variables exist within scenes. In this case, I don't need any global variables, so I'm not going to use global variables. Anyway, so that's how you create a variable and make sure that it is a scene variable. So if you're working on your existing one, you're going to need to change your variables to scene variables. So I'll worry about that. But yeah. All right, so at the beginning of the scene, so if you want to, this is the things that happen at the very beginning of the game, so of that particular scene, sorry. To add that condition, it's add condition, other, and then scene at the beginning of the scene. So I set up a variable as level, and then I load the external layout for level. So I did all this in the original tutorial. So I've got these external layouts, which I'm using numbers to name them, which makes it easy for me to have a variable that I'm just adding every time I go to a new level, and I can load an external layout. So that's what this is doing. So it's expecting text, even though I've named them numbers. Gdevelop still thinks about it as text, so I need to change this variable. This toString, and then that variable level that I created is basically changing this text variable, sorry, this number variable into a text variable so that it works out to load that external layout. Same kind of thing with the lives. I'm setting lives to 3, and then I'm changing the lives graphic, which is this graphic here. Changing animation to represent how many lives I've got. Hiding game over, so when I lose all my lives, I'm going to have the screen say game over. I'm just a lazy way of doing it, just putting the graphic on there and hiding it. And I'm hiding the cursor, which hides the mouse pointer, so when you're playing it. So this is the start of the game again, so check where the ball stops. If you click the mouse button, it starts the ball moving. I've made it slightly random, so between 70 and 110 degrees at 300 pixels per second. And this is making the paddle move towards the mouse. When I did it before, I had to move this, hide the cursor in the main body, but it seems to be working now. Let's just double check it's working. Yeah, oh no, it's showing it again. So it's a bit glitchy. Like now I can see the mouse pointer. I don't know why, but if I put it in the main program, which I shouldn't have to do, but I seem to have to do it sometimes. Now it works. I don't know why. Shouldn't do that, but it is doing that. Cool. So I can't remember whether I think I did have groups in the original tutorial, but what groups are essentially is this button here with the bricks. It turns it on and off. You can create groups, which is like getting a whole lot of different game objects and saying they're the same thing. So in this case, I made one called bounce, and I'll put the paddle, the barrier, and the brick in there. So these are the things that the ball bounces off, which means I can simplify my code and just say the ball has collided with one of those three objects, one of the bounce objects. Well, what do I want to do? I want the ball to bounce. Okay, well, now we're into one of the new things. This is how I make the game more difficult. I make it get faster as you're playing. So I've got a variable called speed, which is my top. Like I only will increase the speed so many times. In this case, 19 times. So I've got this that's incrementing, just keeping track of how many times I've increased the speed, so it doesn't do it forever. Otherwise the ball will go too fast, and it will eventually go fast enough so it will just go straight through your paddle. That would be another thing I haven't done, but I probably would if I was making this like commercially or whatever. I would make this paddle, I would edit the graphic and add some transparency underneath it so that I can make the hitbox go below the paddle, just to deal with that possibility. It should be alright with how I've set it now. It doesn't get too fast, but you can actually set it moving. If you make something go too fast, it will actually start moving more than one pixel at a time, and it can go through things. So just be wary of that. So this is the code for increasing the speed of the ball. I tried a few different ways of doing it. So there's different ways of adding force. I kind of wanted to do force by angle, but that doesn't work. Anyway, none of the others work, but this one does work. So what I'm doing is increasing the force. This one gives a force, and you apply force in the X and Y axis. So I'm using the existing force, the ball's what it's currently at, and then increasing it by 5%. The maths of this is a bit weird. I don't know why I have to multiply it by my logic would say you'd have to multiply it by 1.05, so like the existing, and add 5% to it. But for some reason that's like 105%. That doesn't make sense to me, but that's how it works. So 0.05 works, and it needs to be permanent force. So it just adds to its current speed, and it adds in the actual direction it's going. This is a solution to that. You could do this, I'm doing this with every time it bounces. You could do it when it hits certain bricks, like have different coloured bricks, and then when it hits a certain level, which I think that's how the original worked, original Breakout game. It jumped faster. You could do it as a time thing. This is just how I'm doing it. So, I'll show you this working. I'll make this more extreme, or times by 10, which would be way too much. And then you can preview it, and you'll see it roll, and it gets faster really quickly. Whoops, didn't do very well there. But yeah, you can see it working. And then you can see the power-ups that those are working. I'll explain how all that works. I'll just change that back. I haven't play tested these numbers, so you'll have to play test it and like check what would be the best max amount of times to do it. What's the best speed? So you might want to have a bigger number here, but less jumps. It's up to you. And as I said, you might have different conditions. That when it hits a certain brick color and it hasn't hit it before, it jumps up or whatever. This is also new, this repeat for each instance. We don't really need it in this particular case, but it is a very useful command that's kind of hidden in Gdevelop. So basically when you create a new condition, you can right click on this little bit here, and I can say add for each object, and then you say what object you're talking about. In this case I did it with the brick. What that does is if you've got a condition that applies to multiple things on the screen at once, so there's multiple bricks on the screen, sometimes if the condition and what you're doing to it is simple, it can do it to all of those things, and it works just fine. But sometimes what it will do, if it's more complicated, it will only pick one of those objects to do it, which is not necessarily what you want. So this gets around that and forces it to do it to all of the bricks. In this particular case, all that it's really fixing is if the ball hits two bricks, like it hits in between two bricks, it will delete both bricks, but will only give you points for one of them, so you miss out on some points, which isn't a big deal in this game. But there would be other games that you're making where this would be kind of game breaking, where like two things have happened at once and then only did it once, and you kind of want it to do it twice or 3 times or 10 times or whatever. Anyway, that's what is about there. So if I hit a brick, so basically I'm checking whether it hits a bounce object, and then I'm checking which bounce object it's hit. So if it hits a brick, I delete the brick, play the sound, add to the score, change the scoreboard, and then this is the power-ups, how I'm dealing with power-ups. So I've got a variable, I'm setting it to a random value from, I think that will do 0 to 5, off the top of my head. In reality, if I'm making it, I would make it a bigger number, so that there'd be more cases of it not creating a power-up. I'm just for play testing and whatever, I'm making it just spit up way too many power-ups, but just to test it. So you want a bigger number here. Also, one of the power-ups is a new life, and that's way too common, like 1 out of 5 times you get a power-up, it's a new life. I would have to add some extra check to make that less likely as well, but I'm not really worrying about that. So it checks whether it's less than 6, in this case it's pretty much always going to be, but in reality you'd make it out at 30 or 40 or whatever, so that it happens less often. Then if it is, it creates a power-up where the brick is that got destroyed, gives it a movement, and then change the animation to whatever that number is. So it can only be from 0 to 5, and if I look at that, the graphic for the power-up, so that all the power-ups are one sprite, and I'm using different animations to determine which power-up it is. So that random number is from 0 to 5, and then I set the animation, and then so it'll be a random one of these. So this is a good way of simplifying your code. So when you've got different objects that are kind of the same thing, they behave mostly in the same way, it's often handy to make them all the same scene object or global object, and then just change the animation. That way you reduce your collision. So if I didn't do it this way, I would have to check whether the paddle was colliding with all of the different possible power-ups, which I could do with a group. But in this case, I just have to check whether it's hitting this one sprite, and then after it's hit, I check which one it hit. It's more efficient in terms of how the code's run. Ball is, that's checking whether it hit the paddle, plays a sound. This is the ball going off the screen. If it goes off the screen, I delete the ball, take a life, check that there's no balls on the screen, because you can. One of the power-ups is adding balls. If there aren't any, I take a life away. This is resetting that speed, like the increase of the ball, because I need to do that, otherwise it won't do it once. So I'm resetting the speed limiter, and then I'm also resetting the paddle size, because one of the power-ups makes the paddle bigger or smaller, so I'm resetting that when you lose a life. Checks whether you've got any lives left. If you do, it creates a new ball, changes the lives graphic to represent the new number of lives. If you don't, it will show you the game over. Wait 5 seconds and then go back to the title screen. So this resets the game essentially. Kind of a lazy way of doing it, but it works fine. And then here's all my power-ups. So paddle was collided with a power-up. So I delete the power-up, and then I check which power-up it collided with, and these are the different codes for the different power-ups. So for 0, this is making the ball bigger. So I did that with changing the height and width. So if I come here, so with the ball, I changed the height. I did 1 for the height, so I just based it on the ball's current height. I'm making it 50% bigger. That's what multiplying by 1.5 does. And then I do the same thing with the width. I tried to do it with scale, it didn't work properly, and size, that didn't work properly, but this way of doing it, having it separate. One of them actually created an error in the code, like it actually came up with an error. Anyway, so this works, like just doing height and size separately. I don't know why I had to do them separately, but there you go, not a big deal. This second power-up is the same thing, but making the ball smaller. So I'm multiplying it by less than 1 to make it smaller. You can play around with these numbers to make it do something different if you want. Power-up 2, doing the same kind of thing with the paddle. So instead of height and width, I'm just doing the width of the paddle. So 1 makes it bigger, multiplying by 1.25. 1 makes it smaller, multiplying it by a number that's less than 1. This one is creating a new ball, so the ball splits. If I didn't, you'll notice I've also got a checking whether the ball is stopped, and I've inverted it. So what I've done there is I've added a condition or checked whether it's stopped. The object is stopped, and then I've inverted it. So basically saying is checking for a ball that's moving. I'm doing that so that it's bringing the ball into it, so it looks and sees if there's any balls moving, which there will be, and then it will create an object where that ball is. If I didn't have this condition in it, it would it just doesn't know which ball I'm talking about, even though there's only one ball on the screen, and it basically would create the ball in some sort of random spot. So that's what this is doing. It's referring to a ball so that it'll create it where the ball is. Then checking where the ball is stopped and adding a force to it. This is not a great solution. I kind of would rather the new ball was going roughly the same direction as the old one, but slightly different. Yeah, I probably could think about it more and come up with a solution that does this, but this one, it's good enough. It makes it kind of like the original ball, or exactly like the original ball. It sends it down at an angle. Last power up is lives. It checks whether you've got less than full amount of lives. If you do, it gives you a life and then updates the graphic. This one, what I would in real life would do, would make another random number, like out of 3 or whatever, and if it hits 1, I create the life, so making it less likely that it appears. Like this is way too common, like one of your power-ups is giving you free life. It's too generous. Anyway, that's all of the power-ups. So let's just watch it going, preview it. Let's see some of the power-ups working, hopefully. I can actually control this ball. Oh. Alright, there we go. Boing. So that one's making it smaller or bigger? Bigger. That's smaller. This won't do anything because I've already got full lives. Same. If I had missed a life, it would have, you can see that it got faster. Extra ball. See that working. Smaller again. Oops, make the ball smaller. Oh, no, make it bigger, sorry. Anyway, that's how all of that works. I hope that is helpful for you. I'll show you losing a life. So when I lose all my lives, it says game over, and then waits 5, 4, 3, 2, and then goes that. And that resets your score. If I go back to it, my score is reset and everything is done. Anyway, that will finish the game for you. I hope that is handy for 2 or 3 of you that wanted me to show you how to do that.